Happy New Year. Well, I'm here stuck in Florida quarantining because for Christmas this year I got one of these little COVID pops. That's right, positive, baby. Don't ever tell me I'm a negative Nancy. I'm positive here, so quarantining in Tampa, Florida. Figured I'd do a little video from here about New York. Go figure, I'm in the 6th borough anyway, might as well do one. I'm gonna tell you guys today about the history of New Year's in New York, actually, and how New York became such a big place of celebration for the New Year. How New Year's came to be such a big deal. How it moved to Times Square. How it became a big place of celebration. All that stuff, I told you that already. But I'm gonna go through all that and tell you how it all, unfolded. It's really gonna be interesting. Before we get into it, it's gonna be a quick video. Let's just cover real quick. Check out the Patreon, please. It's a big help. Funds these things, helps me to fight the COVID when I need to. Also, subscribe. If you've seen more than one of these videos, just go ahead and subscribe. Also, to like the video, give it a little thumbs up. Other than that, we're gonna go ahead and get started here. Lucie, how are you doing?
Good.
Yeah, Lucie also got one of these for Christmas, so we're quarantining. So anyways, I'm gonna get started here. I can't really go anywhere in New York, so I'm gonna bounce around my yard, I guess, and to keep you engaged, because that's what a good presenter does. You ready for our first stop and our first topic? Lucie, should we get started?
Let's rock and roll.
Let's rock and roll. Okay, so first of all, why do people celebrate the New Year's? Well, it goes way back. We're talking back like 2000 BC, when the Babylonians would celebrate, the Assyrians would celebrate, and they would celebrate based on the new moons. It was a lunar calendar, and they would celebrate based on the equinoxes. An equinox is basically the one day a year where the Earth aligns perfectly with the sun, and both sides of the Earth get the exact same amount of daylight and night time. It's like where the day is split completely evenly. Only happens twice a year. So they would celebrate it equinox, right? That's what it's called, equinox. Equinox isn't just, an overpriced gym where people take lots of selfies in the mirror. It's actually, a thing. So anyways, that's the lunar calendar. It wasn't until the Romans, actually under one of the Caesars, who actually changed it to a Roman solar calendar. And that's where the 12 months were introduced. January being the first one, named after Janus, the Roman deity, where we're two-faced, one looking back, one looking forward. That's kind of what the New Year is, right? And that's where this one was introduced. But keep in mind, other cultures throughout history, even afterwards, used different calendars. Some still use lunar. For example, the Jews use a lunar calendar. The Chinese use a lunar calendar. So the Muslims use a lunar calendar. So different people celebrate it on different days, continuing for a while. It wasn't until 1582 that Pope Gregory of the Catholic Church declared the Roman calendar, the actual solar calendar, to be the official calendar, but it still wasn't adopted by everybody. It wasn't until the 1750s that the English finally adopted this one for its colonies in the New World. Some people were still celebrating the New Year on December 25th, and I kind of touched on this in my last video, which was how New York City reinvented Christmas. Check that one out, baby. So anyways, this is very important because this is before social media. Remember, this is before, MySpace and Friendster and Bebo, whatever it is you kids use. So it was all kind of just a big jumble. But as the new colonies and everything started to celebrate it and things kind of started to get entrenched, it was places like New York that kind of reinforced these traditions. And I'm going to talk about that at our next stop. All right, so we're here at the palm tree portion of the video to talk to you. Yeah, they exist. Very pretty. All right. Anyways, I'm going to tell you how New York kind of took the lead on celebrations for New Year's. So they believe that celebrations for New Year's happened all the way from 1698 in New York, actually when they installed a bell tower at Trinity Church at the foot of Wall Street, which is actually still there as a church, although it's a third building, but I digress. Anyways, they believe that when they installed those church bells, people would gather there to ring in the new year every single year, to ring in the new year, because they were bells. That's how much New York has changed. People have gone from, going to church for New Year's to, puking on the streets all over the city. Anyways, the first actual recorded celebration of New Year's there was in 1801. And it continued on actually until the 1840s when they actually installed it an 8-octave bell system there, which was a real draw, and people started to gather around there, and it became a huge deal. They celebrated everything. They celebrated the end of the Civil War. They celebrated any kind of event around these bells at Trinity Church. Problem was, as the years went on, it became more and more raucous. By 1885, people were going out there and drinking and getting loud and puking. In fact, in 1893, the head pastor there, his name was Reverend Morgan Dix, actually canceled the whole thing. Yeah, that's right. What a dick's head. Okay, anyways, that year, people in protest, some people actually went to his house and celebrated in front of his house because they were so mad. So the following year, they brought it back. And they said, all right, well, we really have no choice. So the people were kind of like, yeah, that's right, eat a dicks. You know? All right, sorry, that was really juvenile. Anyways, it wasn't until the early 1900s, in fact, in 1904, when the celebration moved from Trinity Church to Times Square. And this was a very important occasion. And when it moved, the people at Trinity Church were super happy. But this changed the celebration in New York into what we know it to be today. And that's where we're going to go for our next stop. All right, so I'm at my next stop here, next to this sick birdhouse. Any New Yorkers want to have a birdhouse? Well, move to Florida, and you can do it too for about 1/10 of what you pay for rent in New York to live with roommates. Anyways, I'm here to tell you how New York moved its celebration to Times Square. So in 1904, the first leg of the Interborough Rapid Transit System was opened. The IRT, the subway, baby. And it was open, and it passed through an area, an intersection of 42nd Street and 7th Avenue, known back then as Longacre Square. Now, it was named Longacre Square after an area of London, a street in London known as Longacre, where traditionally horses and carriages were operated on, etc. And that's the kind of purpose it served in New York as well. But they wanted to create a commercial hub there. And to do that, they needed to get commercial people there. And the first big business they got there was the New York Times. And they did that by promising to name the area after the New York Times. Times Square, New York Times. Holy crap, that's incredible. That right there is worth the entire time you spent watching this video. But it was moved there, and the New York Times are also the people who decided to make it the New Year celebration there as well. So in 1904, 1905, they had fireworks. That was the obvious choice, to shoot off fireworks. All right, great. Problem was, after a couple years, people moved into the neighborhood. It was a little dangerous to shoot off fireworks. You're going to take someone's eye out with those things. So they had to come up with a new idea. And what they did was they took the idea of the ball drop from shipping and port cities. So the idea of the ball drop was actually implemented to get everyone's kind of watches, the chronometers specifically on board ships, all synchronized down to the second. The ball would drop and hit the base at midday, right? And everyone would be on the same time. So the New York Times took this idea as a way to kind of everyone set their watches to the second for the new year. So everyone would be on the same time, and we'd live in peace and harmony. That's beautiful. Anyways, you can still go to the Naval Observatory in Annapolis, Maryland, and they still have the ball drop there. Here's a little trivia. That actually, the Naval Observatory, the mansion at the Naval Observatory in Annapolis, Maryland, is actually the residence of the Vice President of the United States. Ah, look at that. You're learning stuff left and right, baby. Man. Anyways, so that started in 1907. The time ball and the ball drop has been there ever since. They've had 7 different balls used. Yeah, 7 different balls. All right, laugh it up, everybody. We're talking about balls here. We're talking about balls dropping. All right. Anyways, they've had 7 different ones throughout the history. The first one was it was like 5 feet, long. It wasn't very big. The one today is like 12 feet wide, and it's like almost 12,000 pounds. So it's a very big change. In fact, up until 1995, there were people just using ropes to like raise it up and down. It's all like digitized, computerized, and all that stuff now. Pretty crazy. And in the 1980s, they actually replaced it with an apple for the Isle of New York campaigns and stuff. They had a big apple with a stem and everything. It was pretty cool. And then other people had copied that. In fact, in Atlanta, they drop a huge peach for the New Year's, which is kind of funny. So they've used the ball ever since, and it's become a huge celebration. In fact, interesting that it used to be called Longacre Square. After actually a street in London, like I said, where they had all the carriages and stuff. It's a bloody coincidence, isn't it? Huh? It used to be called Longacre Square. It's interesting that it used to be covered in horse crud, the whole area. Well, today people wait long time to secure spots at the New Year's celebration, so much that they skip going to the bathroom. So the ground is covered in human crud. Kind of interesting how that comes around. I think I swallowed a mosquito. Well, anyways, the time ball celebration, the ball drop, has become a huge event, and it's become kind of one of the premier New Year's celebrations in the world, partly because of its coverage and because of the celebrations around the ball drop. And then we'll talk about that one at our next stop. Right, birdies?
Meep, meep.
I think I heard something, Lucy. All right, so I hiked here to this other spot in the yard to tell you how New York's celebration became so important and set a lot of different traditions for the world and its celebrations. So it all kind of started here, like I said, in 1904 with the ball drop. It became kind of a center of celebration. People would fill in. Big deal, right? But everyone had their own celebrations. So in the late 1920s, a guy named Guy Lombardo starts his 48-year run of hosting the kind of New Year's celebrations from, at first, the Roosevelt Hotel and then later the Waldorf Astoria. Now, you guys may not know the name Guy Lombardo, but he was a really famous band leader, a Canadian guy, actually. Leave it to the Canadians to start an American tradition. Just makes those Canadians that much more lovable, huh? But anyways, Guy Lombardo was one of the most famous Canadians ever. He had over 450 million record sales, over 400 hit songs. The guy was all over the place. And he hosted this celebration every single year. And it was actually at this celebration in New York where the tradition of the song Auld Lang Syne was started. In fact, the way it started was in the switch between his broadcast on NBC radio to on CBS radio to NBC radio. In that little interim, he played the song Auld Lang Syne, which he had played, with his band before. And he got the idea for this song traveling through Canada and actually in places like London, Ontario, where there were lots of Scotsmen who used this same song for New Year's because Robert Burns, a Scottish poet, was the one who wrote Auld Lang Syne. He used this to kind of like transition from one broadcast to the next, and it became a tradition every year that he would play. Go figure, huh? It's kind of cool. So anyways, this went all the way until the 1970s. In fact, in 1972, a competitor was started with Dick Clark, who was actually the field reporter. It was actually hosted, the first one was hosted by Three Dog Night. You know who Three Dog Night is, Lucy?
No.
They're the band that sings, "One is the loneliest number that you'll ever do."
Oh.
You know that song?
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good song. That was pretty good too, right?
That was amazing.
Thank you. But anyways, they hosted it first, then George Carlin, and then Dick Clark kind of became the host. But that was competing with Guy Lombardo's until he actually passed away. And after he passed away in 1977, I believe, his band took over, and it wasn't the same without him. So CBS was like, yeah, it's great. You guys, the Royal Canadians was the name of the band. They're like, yeah, Royal Canadians, that's cool that you guys are willing to host, but without your band leader, you're trash. See y'all later. Yeah, Happy New Year's, you freaks. So they stopped hosting it, and Dick Clark took over, and Dick Clark's became the #1 thing, and it rocking New Year's Eve, and it became a tradition. That's where the ball drop is, and it made the ball drop even that much more central and that much more important. And today, it's still celebrated there with people like Ryan Seacrest, who I believe is an android. I'm not sure, but I think he's an android. Anyways, that's kind of how all that began. But it was all through the radio and then TV that kind of pumped it out all over the world and made it such an important celebration and made this tradition kind of, a focal point of New Year's celebrations around the country and around the world. And it was all because of, people like, Guy Lombardo, who was, like I said, one of the most famous Canadians ever live. He was like the Drake of that time. With a little, I'd say probably a little more talent. Not to, don't at me or whatever they say. Don't start commenting, but he was pretty good. And it was kind of a cool thing. He actually knew how big he had made New Year's. He actually had said, "When I die, I'm taking New Year's with me." Well, joke's on him. New Year's is still around, and he's been dead for a while, so we're still doing it. But this has all happened because of the different broadcasts and the traditions that were started in New Year's here in New York City. Well, not here because I'm in Tampa, but you know what I mean. So now let's wrap this video up at our last stop. Right, Lucy?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Where's my walking stick? All right, guys, well, we went through the history of why people celebrate New Year's to begin with, how New York started celebrating New Year's, how the celebration went to Times Square, and how the Times Square celebration got to be so huge. We learned a ton here in quarantine. We made the most of it, right, Lucy?
Oh, yeah.
Well, you know, as we are stuck here indefinitely in Florida, and I'm not freaking out. I'm not freaking out at all. I'm not freaking out that I'm stuck in Florida indefinitely. It's not the weirdest thing ever, so it's not a big deal. But since we are here and you may be stuck somewhere, why don't we celebrate New Year's here together? I'll do a quick countdown and we'll pretend it's New Year's. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year!
Got your wife?
Yeah, should old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to life? Should an acquaintance be forgot and ill the auld lang syne?
Woo!
Yeah, Happy New Year, guys. I'm gonna go retire to my chambers in isolation in the West Wing and have my meals slid through a slit in the door and continue with that. Please, if you like the video, check out the Patreon. There's lots of extras on there, if you catch my drift. You know, not to be creepy, but you know what I mean. Also too, please subscribe. Also like the video. That helps the analytics, as the tech bros told me before I had to retire to Florida. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'm gonna go back in now, baby. It's all over. You thought that was a good video, Lucy?
I thought it was the best video ever.
Well, that's pretty strong words, and I don't know how to take that, but thanks. I guess I'll get ready to go back in. See y'all later. Sick. Actually, sick.